I'm going to show you guys how to animate a wheel here, and what I've done is this is the previous scene, and I'm just going to resave on the previous scene as something else. So let's call this wheel. Actually, I've got a wheel scene, so let's call it wheel 2. And this is actually one of the cogs, so I'm going to duplicate it so I don't have all that animation and expressions attached to it. And I'm just going to bring the duplicate back and line it up in the Maya viewport. Just going to switch to this view here, and I'm going to line it up so it's straight up and down, or relatively straight up and down, and move it over to the middle, just so it's easier for me to set this up. So now we've got it in place. We're going to freeze transformations on it, and we're going to delete its history. So this is a starting point for our wheel. The next thing we're going to do is make a controller for the wheel. So I'm going to switch to the top view here, and I'm going to create a CV curve tool, set it to 1 linear, and just create. I'm just holding X here to snap this. So I'm just going to create this little control handle out of a curve. I'm going to center the pivot on the control handle and line it up where I want it to actually sit. So I want this to sit above the wheel, and I'm going to just make it a bit bigger. Also, you might notice this wheel's not perfectly straight, so it'll actually animate kind of wonky if I don't fix that. So I'm going to freeze that again just after I've moved it. Freeze the controller, obviously after you place it. So I'll have to do that again. Just check that's frozen, and I'm going to delete the history on the controller. Alright, let's give the wheel a name. We'll call it Wheel Geo, and let's give the controller a name. We'll call it Wheel CTRL for controller. So what we want to do is make this wheel rotate based on the translate value of this controller. The first thing we need to do that is we need to know the radius of the wheel. The easiest way to get the radius is to switch to side view and measure it. So we're going to go create, measure tools, and we want a distance tool. We want to measure from the bottom of the wheel to the top of the wheel. So the distance on that is 27.5. So what you need to do is save that value but times it by pi. So I'm just going to create a annotation here. I'm just going to create an annotation, and I'm going to times 27.5 by pi. So I've just created an annotation and I've locked it to the ground plane just so I can remember the number. So it's my top down measurement times pi equals 86.393. So just save that value and put it away. I'm going to actually rig up this wheel now. So to do this, we're going to use a set driven key. So change to the animation menu set, go to animate, set driven key, and open the set menu. You want to select the control and click load driver, and you want to select the wheel and click load driven. Now what are we controlling? We want the controller to move that way, so that's a translate Z. So we want the wheel controls translate Z value to control the wheel rotation in the X value. So the wheel geo rotate X. So now we've got the controller zeroed, the wheel zeroed, and our prerequisite selected in the set driven key window. Click key. So that's a starting point for our set driven key. Now we've got to change both these values. The value that we want in the wheel control, I'm just going to select that, is the saved value, which is pi times our height of the wheel. So we're translating in Z, and my value was 86.393. And you'll see the controller move, and that's fine. We'll address that in a second. And then we want to rotate the wheel. So if the controller moves that way in the positive X, the wheel rotates in X, also in the positive. So what we want to do is enter 360 because we want one full rotation to equal that translation. Once you've got the controller in place and the wheel rotated to 360 degrees, everything's selected in the SDK window, hit key. I'm just going to close that and make sure this works. So I'm going to start by zeroing out my translate Z of my controller. It should pop back to where it was. And let's just see if this works. So I'm going to move that and the wheel will rotate. Right, so we're not completely finished. We want this controller to stay with the wheel. So let's make the wheel the child of the controller. So select the wheel, shift select the controller and hit P. So let's try again with the controller. So it rotates. And once it gets to that original value we entered in a translate Z, it actually just stops. So let's zero that out and let's fix that stopping problem. So you want to select the wheel itself, not the controller, and we're going to repeat its animation. So with the wheel selected, go Window, Animation Editors, Graph Editor, and there's the curve that represents the rotation of your wheel. So with the curve selected, go Pre-Infinity Cycle and Post-Infinity Cycle. They're in the curves menu, and change your tangents to linear. Otherwise it's going to rotate, slow down, speed up, slow down, speed up. So we just want a straight curve so the rotation stays the same speed constantly. So let's try it now from the controller. The wheel rotates and should rotate in the negative too. And that's it. That's a wheel controller. You'd use that on a train or use your imagination.